we were so far down the food chain on this job that we didn't really have the luxury of being able to call the shots. That's changed. Obviously, the more our name has got out there, we respected for our skill set, and so they will now collaborate in advance of a job like that. When should we get you in? Great question.
Hey, welcome to All Things Wood Floor, brought to you by Wood Floor Business. Today's guest, a man who survived more flooring fiascos than most of us have survived Mondays. He's the proprietor of Plankd Flooring in Mount Barker, South Australia. And if you've ever wondered what happens when a scissor lift meets a historic parquet floor, well, Troy Stanfield has lived to tell the tale. From antique furniture restoration to award-winning floor installations, Troy has produced more brilliant timber floors than most big machines have produced dust. He's an ATFA award winner, a Quick Step Master Installer, and a proud member of the IWFA. But don't let all this amazing accolade intimidate you. It's not all guts and glory. He's going to share with us how he once had to battle his way through a detergent contamination incident using hand gestures alone, as well as the time he watched Irish plasterers jig stomp their way through a newly installed Baltic pine floor. You just can't make this stuff up. Grab your buffer, hold it close, hide your chemicals, and brace yourself. Troy Stanfield's Job from Hell is about to become a flooring bedtime classic. Floor pros around the world, let's get to it. All right, Troy Stanfield from Plankd Flooring in Barker, South Australia. Welcome to All Things Wood Floor.
Hey, how you going?
Doing good. But now, Lucy, am I right? I had my clock going for a month waiting for you. It's either about 8 a.m. there, or 8:30 there, or 8:15 or 8:45. I had Sydney and Adelaide. Which one's right?
We're Adelaide, so we're 8:15.
Oh, perfect. Okay, we got it. Yeah, we tried to figure all this out. It's either me working till midnight or you getting up for a podcast at 3 a.m. And I think we finally figured out how to put the two together. Listen, a couple questions for you. We're going to talk a little bit later about some. I got this section for you called Scissor Lifts, Crushed Parquet, and Dancing Tradesmen, and we'll get to that because you wrote some really funny things for Wood Floor Business Magazine. I catch up with all the contractor guys like myself that will write articles and contribute things, and your stuff's always entertaining, educational, and funny. Give me a brief intro to yourself about Plankd Flooring and your awards and your reputation. Just a little bit about that.
Well, we have been running probably about just under 15 years as our current entity. I started off in the floated floor market by mistake. My brother-in-law owns a carpet shop, and I was just out of a job. I was in a hospital environment, middle management, and left that world behind. And I was just in between work, and he says, "Oh, come and watch a couple of guys that are working for me." Right. He says, no, just watch. Don't lift at all. Just watch them. I'm thinking, this is going to go really well. These guys are going to love me. And the day passed. Yes, they were, as expected, pretty frustrated that I'm shadowing them all day. And we get back to the office and my brother-in-law says, "So what did you think?" And I said, "There's 1,000 ways I could have done that job better." And he says, "That was my point." He says, What can you do differently? And I said, well, here's a list of things that I would do differently, my approach. And here we are, all these years later. He got me probably my second job. But prior to that, I was in the antique furniture world. I had spent many years, pretty much after I left high school, just making furniture, restoring furniture, selling furniture. So we had furniture finishing, sanding and polishing on a smaller scale, very detailed work, obviously, with the nature of that sort of work. And long periods in between of just different wood trades. But ultimately, I've landed in the flooring industry by mistake, like many people say. And that's led to where we are today. We carry a good reputation. One thing I said early on to my brother-in-law especially, but to other shops, retail shops that rang me, is don't expect quantity out of me. I'm not here for volume sales. I'm here for quality work. full stop. and yeah, no, that's fine. I said, no, you don't understand. If you're interested in just throwing meters down on a floor, that's not me. So I maintained that ethos right through, and ultimately that has turned around to become a small scale but a successful business in that regard. And so we've carried our name across the work that we do, and sometimes very detailed work. But we take on the work that obviously a lot of guys don't want to touch because they're not skilled enough or they're not confident enough. They've not been exposed to it. And so that's where we sort of find our niche. So we take on the things that are complicated. They're difficult. They're not straightforward. And that obviously harks back to my more detailed background. And we've won a few awards along the way.
Well, you're not building tree houses. You're building a pyramid. You got a solid base. But you're at about 20 years. Right? You've been doing this quite a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, probably about 15 years as our current entity.
Sure.
But I had worked for a few people beforehand. I did do a little bit of carpet laying. Hated it.
Right. We always get stuck doing stuff like that. But did woodworking come first? Like, what was your first woodworking project? Where did you do something prior to that, like in woodworking?
So, as I say, I started off in the furniture world. So I did really well with my woodworking classes in high school. Did very well, in fact. My last couple of years of high school, I topped the state with my grades, and I had a very old school woodwork teacher, and he was very hands-on, but he recognised a certain skill that I obviously had that he nurtured, and I'm obviously forever grateful for that exposure back then. And he was all about, this is how you do it, and this is how you do it right.
Is woodworking different? We're going to probably get into some of the species of wood in that, but here our staple materials would be probably in furniture, cherry and walnut, but which you wouldn't find on the floor too much, and a lot of oaks, but then maples and things. But as you know, as a woodworker, you built some beautiful things out of maple, but now you're getting warping and checking and splitting. It's hard to screw. It's hard to nail. Like what are the woods you're using when you're building a piece of furniture as opposed to what you can do with a floor?
If I'm making furniture, I'm probably using the same local eucalypt species that we would have here in Australia. But in my restoration days, I was using all kinds of furniture, timbers, mahogany, walnut, maple, cherry. Probably the oldest piece, in fact, I worked on was a 1700s American cherry little round hall table. And that was amazing. For the age, it was in very good shape. A lady had brought it over from the States, and I must have only been probably 17 working on that at the time. But yeah, amazing. And you respect the history of that piece, and so you it's important not to destroy the patina on the finish, and maintain joint integrity and those fundamental building block skills. I've carried forward.
Isn't it funny? I've done flooring for all my neighbors and everyone, and I have a big family. Just about everyone in the family, no matter what I've done. My niece Christy, they always go, "Why is her floor so beautiful?" You know what it is? It's the only one in the family. It's Australian cypress. And it's hard as steel. It's gorgeous. We have similar woods, maybe hickory, maybe, heart pine or something. But isn't it funny? For me, that's an imported exotic. And and American cherry is what we call a domestic exotic. For you got a piece of American cherry and it's totally domestic. It's just funny how what would it cost to ship that stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you combine, when you're doing, you must do a lot of mentoring of the people that work for you. Do you share a lot of the woodworking skills as almost a furniture maker, or the skills you're sharing with your mentorship, all of the hardwood flooring tools and equipment part of it?
Yeah, I guess I would describe myself as probably someone more of a mentor. A lot of the people that I've had working for me over the years, I am very hands-on. So I don't just put a broom in their hand and say, "Here, go sweep a corner," as any classical apprentice, stereotype. But
right.
if you've come on my team, you're going to be starting to learn the ropes, and you're going to learn them pretty quickly, and you're going to learn some fairly complex, detailed things. And not every job is like that, of course. We do routine installations, routine sand and finish floors for mums and dads, but whatever we do, it's going to be the highest quality we can offer. And so if it means scraping a corner, if it means, going to a certain sanding grade that I'm happy that the sanding pattern is good, if the finish is not quite right, and sometimes we get it wrong, we're all human, but you own the mistake and you go and fix it before it becomes a mistake that you don't get paid for.
No, is the power different? Like, I know when I get machines from overseas, we always have to clip them and change the cords. Is everything there 230, or is it you have different?
40 volt. Yeah, 240 volt over here. So
it is. Oh man, your edges must run so nice.
Yeah. We've got some good gear now. If we do,
yeah, right.
Yeah, like everyone, you start off small and you work your way up. And I think just carrying that reputation forward and maintaining, as I say, that ethos of just quality over quantity, that's been really good for my business. And you take pride in the work you do. It's good old-fashioned pride. And I think that's been reflected in a lot of repeat business, a lot of referrals, and that has kept us through. We haven't advertised forever. Don't need to.
The good ones don't.
Yeah, but we've become I suppose, a little boutique niche market within our area, and that's great. We take on the jobs that not everyone wants to touch, and sometimes that's just pushing skills forward. Maybe we're learning a skill, something that maybe we haven't tried before, and we'll say, yeah, we can do that, and then I'll come home and say to my wife, now, how do I do that?
Yeah. Well, what does Plankd look like? What does Plankd look like? Here you could have some very productive companies with 2 guys, 3 guys, 20 guys. You could have a retail store with somebody that does sand and finishing. What does Plankd look like, and what's the day-to-day operation look like?
We are mobile. We don't have a store presence at this point in time. We haven't needed to at the same time, but my wife and I, so we're hands-on on the tools, as well as obviously all the business behind the scenes. We have a full-time worker with us, and we also have a couple of contractors so that they might just casually work with us from time to time, depending on the nature of the job. And also my son broke away from us just before he got married. So he was working with us right through, probably from 12 years old. I think he was about 19 or 20 before he moved out and got into a couple of years in retail, and then came back and got married and started his own installation sand and finish business. So if we have a big job and I would want to have the extra numbers or use his expertise as well, we'll drag him in and make a big family affair of it.
That's a smart way to do it. Anytime you can team up in your area, seems to be generationally, anybody that gets trained well, whether they're family or not family, they scoot along, do their own thing. One of my biggest customers has 3 sons, and they work together, then they work apart, and they work together, and they would never let a good-sized job go away. But it also gets them to try different things. One sands better, the other one installs better, and sometimes they'll jump in on that. Sounds like you're sharing the wealth with everybody here.
Yeah, and just I'm very much a giver. The skills that I've learned, I don't keep to myself. I get a lot of guys, even on Instagram, I get a lot of people say, "Oh, what would you do here?" And they know that I will generally provide that information. I remember, I think it was a podcast I heard Sprig Lynn say once, "I'm a bookstore, not a library."
Right.
And that's actually stuck with me because it's so true. And I think to a point you can be generous, but then it comes a point where it has to cost them. Mm-hmm. And your expertise is worth something and you need to charge for it. And that's sometimes been a bit of a hard lesson because I am a generous person by nature. So you have to then switch hats and put your business hat on and say, okay, well, I can give you that advice, but how about I give it to you in a paid quote?
You're that guy, aren't you? I'll go to we have Home Depot and Lowe's, and my wife won't let me go in the wood aisle because if I run into anybody, it's a 1-hour seminar. I'm like, you can't help it. You're like, I can hear what's going on. It's ridiculous. What are you telling these people?
I know, I cringe every time. So we call it Bunnings in Australia. And if I've ever walked down the flooring aisle and I hear the young kids trying to sell somebody something and I just walk away and shake my head.
Run.
I know what you're talking about. So business opportunity, but probably the wrong client for us.
It's funny. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, a lot of what you write on, when you write online like you do, a lot of what you write is sharing and imparting the information that you've learned. You mentioned Spriglin. We talked about that once. He said he's had people come together from around the country and all work together. And he always says, there's several of us in a room and they will look over each other's shoulders and go, I wouldn't do it that way. But everybody will do it some masterful way that will come out, the proper way. But yeah. I think it was Fino Officio said to me in a podcast, he goes, you know what I love? I came to America for one big reason. People at our level, a good level, a master level around the world, rush to share with each other. They don't, not the early years when you're a kid and you don't want your competition to know your pricing or what you're doing. No, you can't wait to share. You're at that level. There's nothing left. You're confident. You got it locked down. Go share.
Yeah, yeah. And I've often heard where if you don't have competitors, you have colleagues or you have collaborators. And I think when you reach a certain point, that's fair and that's true. I think once I made that mental switch of I don't have competition down the road. I don't care what they're charging. My rate is my rate and my skill is my skill. And if that means that I might miss the occasional job, that's okay because I don't want to win every job. We want to win the jobs that we can cherry pick and say, this is a good fit for us. It took me a long time to realize that, and it probably took me a long time to get out of the floated floor market when I first started, but that's a life lesson at the same time. And, I think we've reached a point now where we've got that reputation that carries forward. We get a lot of feedback from industry. We get a lot of feedback from repeat clients. I have so many groupies on Instagram from old clients. They keep following us. They've stayed with us, and oftentimes that will refer to their family or friends, or a new project that they might have sold their home and they've moved on to another project, and we'll get the phone call. So that's been really good.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I used to say when I would teach and train, some people would come up to me and tell you, well, my particular machine is the only good one and everyone knows it. And my buffer is the only. And I saw a guy with a buffer made of a washing machine motor, and he swore it was the greatest thing. And I call it very geocentric. Until you've met Troy Stanfield, until you've met people around the world, until you met the people from Florida and California and Canada, and you listen and you realize, wow, I'm missing out on a lot. And like you said, you develop colleagues, you start to learn, and you're not so geocentric. You realize, boy, there's a lot of ways to do this and a lot of different equipment, but we're all trying to get to the same particular goal with whatever the flooring project might be. You've got a lot of highlights in your career and awards, and I want to cover 3 of them because I know you've got ATFA awards. You're a Quick Step Master Installer and a IWFA membership. Let me work through those really quick. What is the ATFA and what is the award that they gave you?
We've had a few awards with ATFA. Initially, we were working with the SPC hybrid product when we first joined. We no longer prefer to work with that product. I don't particularly like the product, but it does sell and it sells very well. But we decided if we're going to play with this product, we're going to just push the boundaries a little bit and we're going to maybe introduce a herringbone pattern to it. So my first award was a herringbone wrapped staircase in the hybrid product. And that was not heard. No one heard of that. No one tackled it. And so we decided if we're going to do this, we're going to put our stamp on it. We're going to, this is Plankd Flooring. This is not just Troy Stanfield, this is Plankd Flooring. This is the team effort. We're going to make this our own. And we walked away with an award for it in our first year of membership. And so that was pretty special. That led to another back to back the next year with a similar category, with a floor this time in a herringbone. And then that led to last year we had our first regional awards. We took 3 categories. We topped the state for our business, which was amazing, unexpected. I remember getting a phone call from the event manager, and I was in the middle of a real headache job. My focus was very much on fixing this problem on a job. And I get this phone call and he says, "Are you sitting down?" I said, What do you mean? And he says, "You've just taken the 3 awards. You've beaten the state." What?
Wow.
What? And so that was amazing. My focus shifted very much off the problem onto the rewards. But yeah, we took a sand and finish category. We took a solid timber floor category and an engineered staircase category, and they in themselves they were different scopes of work and very unique jobs within themselves. Some of them, the sand and finish category, it was a mum's and dad's house. It was, in my view, nothing special, but for the category of a before and after of what we had to achieve was worthy of a win, apparently. And this is voted by members. So we essentially had to pull off a ceramic tile off a timber substrate on a pine floor without destroying the subfloor. But
Right.
the subfloor was the feature timber, and the client never believed it was possible to bring this thing back to life. And we walked away with an award to say, yes, it could be done.
Well, the language is different, right? Because here we talk about the National Flooring Association or the National Oak Flooring Main, so all those type of things. But you guys have the ATFA. Is that the Australian Timber Flooring Association?
Australasian Timber Flooring Association.
It is. I saw that. I thought it was a mismatch. It's Australasian. Okay.
We
I love that. So those who are listening, where Troy is in Australia or around the world, they don't say hardwood flooring. They say timber flooring. That kind of seems to make a lot more sense because we sell pine and fir and the things that aren't, hardwood, but that's pretty slick.
But it is you wouldn't necessarily use construction pine as a floor, although utility grade floors, yes,
they do it here. Yeah.
But yes, we also pick up New Zealand within that Australasian category, so that makes essentially the two countries side by side.
What is included in Australasian?
So Australia and New Zealand.
And New Zealand, okay. Give me just a quick thing, because for those that don't know about Australia, because it's a very big place. You're in South Australia.
In South Australia, we're up in the Adelaide Hills. So Adelaide's our capital. We're in a little town called Mount Barker. Not so little anymore. It's more or less out of metro. So we've been swallowed up by suburbia. But essentially, we're in an agricultural district. Where we are, we're on the outskirts of what we would describe. The Adelaide Hills is known for its international food and wine, and we're pretty much right on the boundaries of that. But yeah, it's quite a pretty part of the world.
Is the weather like here from Maine to Florida? We go from bone crushing dry all the way to tropical. In the between, the humidity ranges like crazy. But if you go out in western United States, like Arizona and New Mexico, it's pretty much dry and arid at all times. Is your area, does it change a lot like that, north and south?
Yeah, it does. Up north, so Northern Territory, far north Queensland, far north Western Australia, you'd be up in the tropics. Right in the middle of the country is bone dry desert. You would say probably Arizona. Our state picks up most of the centre of the country, so South Australia as a state is very, very dry overall. Where we are, we're on sort of the coastal zones, so we're more temperate, a bit more Mediterranean. I would say probably very close to California climate, probably maybe San Francisco, somewhere thereabouts where we are. But wet winters, dry summers, and somewhere in between, through the rest of the year. But we what you would describe as fall, we get proper autumn. Okay. So we get proper fall colour.
There you go.
Trees where we live, and that's really pretty. And a lot of people around the country in Australia have never seen those colours change in the leaves. That's normal for us.
Wow. What are the few species that are just common here? It's pine trees, oak, maple, about it.
We have, I think you call it Monterey pine over in the States. We have lots of pine plantation forests in our area. That's obviously an introduced species, but essentially we're eucalypt. We have stringy bark, which is a local one for our state. That's no longer harvested as a commercially viable timber, although it is a very pretty timber to work with. Most eucalypts, very dry, very brittle, very dense. So they're very, very tough on the tools.
Eucalyptus, is that where jarrah? That's where jarrah comes from, or we don't see it anymore, but we used to sell it. Okay.
Yeah. Jarrah comes from Western Australia, a little pocket of Western Australia. That's no longer allowed to be milled. protected species. We can thank our pioneer settlers for that.
Yeah, right.
They raped and pillaged the hillsides.
We had King's pine, which is the true heart pine, and there was 15 million acres in the country. Now there's about 500,000 acres, and they used it for. But it's interesting. Our pals, the British, used it for ship masts, and anywhere you get on the coast here, you'd have a road, Mast Road. I lived on Mast Road, and they marked everyone King's pine. If you got caught with anything over 18 inches in your attic, you'd go to jail. It was for Lord Mason, the governor of New Hampshire and New England, or it went back to the King of England, and there are still king pine out there, but not like they used to be. You got cool stuff. You got like the koalas and kangaroos and wallabies and all the stuff people would want to see if they go to Australia. Like right out in your backyard.
Of course, we've got the kangaroos hopping in the driveway. No, yes, they are around. Pardon me. We do have quite unique animals in this country, and there's some of them obviously have international renown. Yes, they're in the trees. Yes, they're in the paddocks, but they're in the distance. Although we do see a lot of those animals creeping into suburbia a bit more as we get a dry state. They're looking for water.
You ever seen a koala?
Yeah, quite often.
I ask you because I've had two guys that did flooring for me that operated about the capacity of a koala.
Yeah, we nickname them drop bears here in Australia. But
I love it.
The Asian tourists love them. They're very fluffy. They're very cuddly. But you probably wouldn't want to stir one up because they do have very, very sharp claws, and naturally because they climb trees. So you would be cautious. But we've had a couple of jobs where they've actually run up to us in the driveway, curious, looking for food and water. And so that's always pretty special for us too, even as locals.
I saw on Instagram, it was just cute. A lady was teeing off. She was in Australia on a golf course, and she goes to put her ball in the tee, and a kangaroo showed up. And then 10, then 20, then 30.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
I did.
She's like, I can't hit my ball. It's so funny.
Yeah. That would be a unique moment, but in some places that can be quite common, which I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah, we have herds of deer. So go into that. I was talking to you about awards. Now, the Australasian Timber Flooring Association had awards, and these are the awards you got. You're a quick step master installer. Give me a little bit about that. What does that involve?
That was essentially when we were in the floated floor market.
Sure.
That was recognition, I guess, of the brand Quick Step.
Sure.
So, pardon me, that is essentially engineered timber, laminate. And if we were playing in that market, we wanted to be the best we could be within that market. So whatever training was available, and there was none, when this came along, we jumped at it because we wanted to say, we're not just laying floors, we're going to do the best we can be. And so that was an opportunity just to tick a box, I guess, of a brand recognition saying, you've done some certified training with us, and we're prepared to give you the training that we feel our installers of any installer of our brand is going to be recognized in some fashion. So they set up a system where they have a master installers class, a couple of days, and just fine-tune skills. In my class, I was the second one in Adelaide for our class, and there was a fella there that had been working 30-odd years in the flooring game. He didn't pass because he'd been making the same mistake for 30 years.
Sure. Get out of bed doing the same thing.
Yeah, and so that again was probably just a little bit of an eye-opener. It was an opportunity to say, well, don't get complacent. You're only as good as the last job you've done.
The IWFA, I'm not overly familiar. I've heard of it. Tell me a little bit about the IWFA.
IWFA, International Wood Flooring Association, and we've not had a huge involvement with that other than just a referral to that. Essentially, it's based around design, finished design, where you might take more of an artistic approach. I know there are a few Aussies as members, and that ultimately is how I first learned of it, was through one of the Aussies here, Greg
Not
Saglarski.
Saglarski. Oh, you dragging him into this? He's a madman. He has some cool stuff. He was like, I think, my second podcast. He's a sharp dude.
Yeah. No, we've rubbed shoulders a bit, and we did actually invited us to a specialised parquetry training a couple of years ago, back up in Brisbane where he lives, in the state of Queensland, and that was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun there. We learned some very, very unique skills. Lenny Hall was over from Florida, and Corey Osmond from London, from AHPEC. And so that was, we were all kindergarten kids in this class. We were all of us within the class from Australia and New Zealand that were invited, and it was by special invite. We all know our stuff, but we're sitting in this class just in disbelief.
I'm not worthy.
We're not worthy. Exactly. And so we walked away with just humbled, one, that we were there, but we were collaborating with these guys and have a mutual respect for each other. And like you said earlier, it's one of those situations where it was appreciated that we're recognised for who we were within the game. And we had something to offer, otherwise we wouldn't be there.
Oh.
But at the same time, we were learning new things that we'd never been exposed to. And I still bust out the Lenny maths when I do a herringbone floor now.
Really? Yeah.
Because my approach was my approach, but using Lenny's logic of actual mathematics, and that's not my strongest point. We guarantee that we've got a straight line in a herringbone floor now, or a patterned floor. And, there's a logical approach to it. And so I actually introduced that. I changed my method completely. Well, in fact, no, I didn't. I morphed my method with his method. I use his maths, but I still use my laser lines and string lines, chalk lines.
Sure.
Either way, we're going to have a straight line.
Right. Hey, some use the Pythagorean theorem, some use a laser. Listen.
Yeah, whatever works.
Got to bring it together. That's what puts you guys in a whole other category.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. We learned a lot, and we still collaborate with those guys today.
This episode is brought to you by Odie's Oil. Developed by a wood flooring pro, no finish is more safe, durable, beautifying, and versatile, with lower cost and higher profit margin. Experience the pinnacle of finish with free on-site demos and training. Learn more at odiesoil.com. That's ODIES oil.com.
Now, a lot of what you do, it's great having someone from overseas do this too, is a lot of people will contribute to Wood Floor Business Magazine. We think of something, we write about it, we have a crazy story. You do a lot, and whenever I get a chance I see your stuff, I'll grab it. I know one of the things you wrote was, I call it the job from hell. I think you call it the horrible job that taught me so much. What was that job about? Because go over that with me. It's going to be in the next issue, I believe. So let's give people a little preview.
A little preview. So this was a job to remember for all the wrong reasons.
Uh-oh.
I landed this job by accident. It was a commercial job, probably one of the biggest commercial jobs I'd taken on at this point. And I hadn't been doing sand and finish work much at that point. I had done a lot of installations, and that was my main focus. But it was definitely early on in that sanding and finishing side of my business. So I didn't have my own equipment. I had to hire equipment, a little old High-Tech sanding machine. It was barely 40 kilograms. So it was very light.
Is it a buffer or a square buff or a drum? What is it?
Drum sander. It's a drum sander.
Little drop drum? Okay.
Yep, tiny little drum sander. No weight to it whatsoever. I think at one stage I ended up putting dumbbells on it from the van just to add extra weight.
Somebody sit on it.
Yeah. But to this job, by the time it got to this stage, I was on my own, and it was just a logistical nightmare. This job, I had to park almost a mile down the road before I could even get my tools. There was ridiculous site safety. It was an old hospital. It used to be our state Royal Hospital, the old Royal Adelaide site, and that had become the focus of a big government shift to create collaborative office spaces. NASA was moving in, for example, and this particular space that I was working in we had this old heritage parquetry in jarrah, so one of our hard, eucalypts,
Okay, go.
and very dense. But they had maneuvered this scissor lift through this space, and it was so brittle and so dry. This because it was probably 100 and something plus years old. It just cracked.
They drove
and
it over your floor?
Drove it over
A
the
scissor
floor.
lift.
Yeah. So all of this is interior spaces, but this was a big commercial giant builder company, and there was a lot of people on the ground, and so there was no space to maneuver. So they've taken a shortcut, and guess what? They've broken the parquetry pattern. So part of our task was to restore this parquetry, but to be fair, it was probably close to the end of its life anyway. There was no wear layer left on this timber at all. Over its
You
life,
can see the nails.
Yeah, sanded to within an inch of its life. So
How old was it?
This would have been probably, I would say that building would have been maybe the late 1870s, thereabouts. So reasonably old.
Think it had like cut nails. You think? How
No, they'd used an old bitumen glue.
Okay, which is that's a pine sap based. I think we talked about this one. Bitumen.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Petroleum probably based. So I think you might describe it as tar. So it was that black gooey masticky sort of substance, but that comes with its own risks. Back in the day, they would have had asbestos fibers in the glue. Naturally, we had to be a bit cautious.
Did they heat the bitumen, or can you do wide solid like that? Was it solid or really thin stuff?
Thin. So what would you say? 1/4 inch thickness. So really quite thin. The wear layer was just about non-existent.
That's why it was glue. What kind of subfloor was it?
Just concrete.
Oh boy. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
People don't know what bitumen is here. My wife would think it's my name for the guys I golf with. So we'll let people know it's an adhesive. In Florida, they used to use hot roofing tar or things like that. So no wonder as you're sanding, there's not a lot left in this floor. What were they driving the scissor lift over it? Why were they doing that?
They were taking a shortcut through from a big open, essentially what would have been probably a ward environment that had been stripped out, and it was just a shell of a building, and they were just taking a shortcut out through the front door so they could work on the facade. And in the process, they've destroyed the old parquetry pattern, which would have been probably like an old checkerboard style square on square pattern.
Yep,
nothing complicated, but quite sophisticated for the era.
Sure,
that been laid. And but yeah, there was nothing left of it, and so we had to source old timbers. What's unique about old jarrah is old growth jarrah, like this is very dark red to black colours, and very dark browns. But this and the density is important too, because obviously the older it is, the denser and the richer the colour. So we had to replicate that if we bought, or if we could even, because it's not forested anymore, anything is salvaged timbers to try and locate. So if you had new growth jarrah, it's almost this magenta colour or pale straw. There's zero comparison to the old growth jarrah. So we had to locate some old timbers. We found a salvage yard that had old fence posts.
Fence posts?
And, yep.
Wow.
And that had the desired colour, the desired density, and we milled them on site to recreate the profile, old tongue and groove as well, replicated, so that we could match that era timber so that it didn't look like we'd patched into an old building, because obviously this is a heritage building. Mm. We needed to make like for like, choose to reuse, essentially. So we tried to find that the oldest timbers that we could, and mill them on site, because you're not buying anything off the shelf here. This is you can't just go to Bunnings or Home Depot.
You say heritage building. Is that like we would say here a historic building? Is that what that is? It's
correct.
Okay,
yeah.
So they protect those, and it's part of the heritage. Gotcha. Okay. Aren't fence posts? Isn't that all the hard core of the tree? That had to be tough to cut.
It is tough to cut, and because the density of this old timber, this is brutal on your tungsten tips.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, we probably milled, maybe a dozen or so posts of probably 6-foot lengths, and they're all probably 6-inch by 6-inch posts. But to run them down through an on-site table saw,
12-inch blade, or to find something bigger?
Yeah. Well, the best we had was probably 9-inch.
Oh.
So we're trying to essentially hack these on site to create a piece of mastery. But
you also heard of a bandsaw? Because I think we're going to ship you one on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's right. Had I had the luxury of having that on site, that would have been amazing. We had to make do with what was available to us. And just the logistics of the site. As I say, we had to walk, nearly a mile to our van to get equipment. And by the time you've clocked in, clocked out with all the safety people, and being right in the heart of the city, parking, logistics was just terrible. We're a huge commercial construction site. There was maybe a dozen different major construction companies working on the site over different buildings. So there's jurisdictions as well that you had to navigate through. So it wasn't the most user-friendly of spaces to be working in at the best.
No, huh?
And really, at the end of the day, we were small fry. We were so far down the food chain in the pecking order of contractors. That we're just following orders here.
Working under ladders and around scissor lifts.
Yep.
Ridiculous. Did you use the bitumen again, or did you use some other adhesive?
No. Correct. So we used a little portable, like just a hand concrete grinder, a Festool grinder,
to get that off.
Cleaned off the glue. Once we got that back down to a clean concrete substrate, waterproofed it, used a Cyan-based adhesive, and that was able to fulfill the task well, but recreate the pattern, then sand it back down. And as we're sanding, we were discovering more and more that there was more loose parquetry. There was more wear layer that was disintegrated. And so as we're almost at full sanding stage, and we're replacing timbers again, going back to square one, grinding out the concrete, cleaning the bitumen glue off.
And then you get it installed in this is the one you're sanding a rental with, right? You're using a rental?
So this thing,
2,800 Janka to 3,000 Janka floor with a rental drop drum. Was it the tilty type of drum, or did you have a handle you could drop it down with?
No, tilty. So you're doing all the work.
That's like Silverline SL8 tilt. Boop. Hey,
yeah.
You get going behind it. It feels like you're water skiing. It's over here. It's over there.
Yep.
It's crazy. How big is this floor?
This floor was not huge. I would say, what would you say in your language?
30, 40 meters, something small like that?
Yeah, I would say about a 30 square meter space. So
it's like 100 and something feet?
Yeah, it's a small room.
How long did this take you to rip up, replace, and sand? Did you do it in a day, or no? This was not in a day.
This extended well into the evening. I'm now, because as you'd appreciate, you were saying before, there's a cast of thousands on the site, so we're moving around other trades all the time. There was other trades coming and going in the space. We never had clear access to those areas, so we had to work around other trades, which was just a nightmare. And so my sanding and my frustration levels are obviously building as the day is progressing. But by the time all the general trades staff had left for the day, maybe 3 p.m., I'm still going because now I've got essentially what would be a clear space, but this sander is just not coping with it. And we had to get a fair bit of wear layer down to match the surrounding floor. So we're sanding thickness out of these timbers. That was just it was a momentous task.
What kind of sandpaper goes on this thing? The little cut sheets? Yeah,
just little cut sheets. So, and it was old silicon carbide that was supplied to us. So we just had no oomph behind the sander. It was just not fit for the task. And my determination was strong, but it was waning as the day progressed. Yeah, I think it was in the end something like 18 hours. The sander.
Are you like there in the morning and people are coming in and asking you, "Wow, you're here early"? No, I haven't left yet.
haven't left. Exactly. Yeah, I think there was one stage where I was so tired, and I'd been going right through. I'm starting to drift off at the sander, and I'm thinking to myself, this is stupid. The job's not worth this.
No.
I'm going home to bed. This is about 9 a.m. the next morning, and the other trades had started to arrive on site, and I'm just thinking, I've still got the last little bit of finish sanding to go, but I'm done. I'm falling asleep at this machine. This is not good. So I packed up my goods, got in the van, and drove home. I think I slept for about 5 hours and turned my phone off. I woke up to about 20 missed calls. Very far-rate contract.
Where are you? Did you quit?
Where are you? Yes.
Well, it's jarrah, right? I know somebody that has worked with that. We used to sell it ages ago. One of the things they used to complain about was they said the dust is a royal pain in the ass. They would get in your skin. Was that a problem? We had it on the walls once.
Oh, absolutely.
Really? Yeah.
There was most definitely, and it's red dust as well. So there was one stage I looked up. I was in the middle of my fatigue. I've looked up and I've seen it up in the air conditioning ducts, up in the roof space, and that's probably 30 feet in the air. And I'm thinking, that's floated high. That's going to be a problem. And I'm hoping I'm not around when someone comes to clean that, because that's got my name on it.
Once you get all wrapped up, did you jump right into sand, coating it, and everything went fine? Or did the mayhem ensue even further?
Yeah, this job kept giving. This was the gift that kept on giving. I'd started coating, and I'd just about finished putting I hadn't even put a sealer down yet. I'd just gone to swap gear out in the van, put my sanding gear away and get the finishing gear out and clean the site. And there was an Indian cleaning crew had come through, and their English was not great, sign language at best. And I tried to explain to them, this is not to be walked on. I need to coat this floor. They didn't understand what I was talking about. By the time I've come back to site with my finishing gear, they've flood mopped the floor with detergent.
Oh no! Oh no!
Raw timber, and I just about saw red. And I'm a pretty patient person, but my gestures would have been coming across like a crazy person.
Yeah, that ain't water popping.
It did not need water popping, and certainly not with detergent.
Oh,
and that's
when I killed him, Your Honor.
That's right. So my patience had worn very thin at this point, and I think they picked up on the body language more than anything, and they've hightailed it out of there. But that kept coming back to bite me the more I tried to work the coat. And it was a water-based finish as well, so we were having all kinds of issues with it, binding to the timber and binding to each coat. In the end, we just had major contamination from the detergent that it would have required a full resand again, and that just wasn't. We're getting contractors breathing down our throat saying, we've got NASA moving in. We didn't have time to keep playing with it, so we had to just coat as it was.
What you coat it with? Just so I know, what did you seal it with? What'd you coat it with?
So we used Bono Traffic HD on that job.
Okay, straight up, no sealer.
With a sealer, so we had an intent sealer.
Cool.
From a tannin blocker point of view, but also it obviously enhanced the colour tone of the old growth timbers.
Are you going to put pictures of that on your online article?
I think there is one.
There is one? Okay. I can't remember if it's been posted yet or not, but when people do go to look at woodfloorbusiness.com, your article is on there and it'll have photos. That'll be great. That's cool.
Yeah. Certainly it shows the thin wear layer, and you'll get a sense of how much had been sanded out of this floor, even with the constant little running repairs that we had to make. That was, and just because I was on my own too, by this stage, my staff are on other jobs. So I didn't have the luxury of calling them in, and they didn't have their safety clearance for site induction on this particular commercial project. So the only one licensed and qualified to be there. So it was, quite the challenge.
Did you need professional mental health expert help after that?
I think so. It definitely taught me a lot about what jobs are worth taking on, and especially in a commercial space. And it actually taught me, what it taught me really was, is one, when to say no.
Yeah.
And two, being the master of my own diary.
Right.
I think we had, that was probably the biggest lesson, because we're just jumping from pillar to post on these sorts of jobs because you're just making a living, and we were knocked about on these sorts of jobs. And so we decided, no, something has to give, and it's not going to be us. If they want us, it has to. Obviously, you've got deadlines on specific projects, but and certain windows to get you in. But we need to make sure that this fits our schedule as much as possible. So if they wanted us, we give them a window that we're available, and if that doesn't work, you seek another contractor.
You got to manage their expectations a lot when you're right. You got to get it right up front there. Listen, here's what we do. Here's what to expect.
Correct. And too many fingers in the pie on those big jobs. There's a lot of interested parties. As I say, we were so far down the food chain on this job that we didn't really have the luxury of being able to call the shots. That's changed. Obviously, the more our name has got out there, we respected for our skill set, and so they will now collaborate in advance of a job like that. When should we get you in? Great question, because now we can say, well, this is the area that I would suggest we would slot in, and this is the time frame, but you need to communicate with us to make sure you're on track, because if it affects our schedule, we might not be available in the time you want us anymore.
Yeah, that works. I'm going to switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Keeping what we talked about your articles that you wrote, you did one in September of 2024 in the little tricks of the trade segment of Wood Floor Business, which everybody loves. And it was keeping track of your finish made easier. And give me a little bit about that. I know you talked about when you open finishes, when you're using finishes, how to date them, how to look out for them. Give me a little bit about what you talked about in there. I know a little bit was about looking at how the dates are marked and marking the volumes, et cetera. Tell me a little bit about how you work with your finishes.
Well, I guess in some of the jobs I've had in the past, you would have a stock rotation system, and that seemed quite appropriate in this sort of context because we've got use by dates on finishes and things of that nature. And while every contractor will stretch the boundaries, we all do, there comes a point when that finish may not be viable to work with anymore. Or it could be temperature control in your environments, or it could be that you've opened the lid and now it's been exposed to air, and so that's got risks of, ingredients separating or going lumpy and things like that. So we decided it's a really smart and a really simple approach to just have stock rotation.
First in, first out kind of thing.
Correct, yeah. So that logic made sense to us even from a business inventory point of view, but we're managing the stock, so we're using the old stock first. If it had looked like it wasn't usable anymore, then it just simply gets discarded. We write a date on the top that we've opened it. So we, at a very quick visual glance, if it's in the van and everything gets chucked on top, my van is notoriously busy.
That's kind. Oh, they all are.
Yeah, we throw it all on top, but if we can see a label, we can see a date on it, then we know that, okay, that's when that was opened, and then, okay, well, how much has been used? So on the side, you've usually got little markers. The manufacturer always puts a little marker to say, this is 1 litre, 2 litre, 3 litre, 4 litre. Mm-hmm. How much have we used on this job? Well, just make a texter mark on the side.
Sure.
Permanent marker, so we can see that's a visual. And we have to, do 101 for dummies sometimes, depending on which junior has picked it out of the van. But it's just a quick visual to say, okay, we've got 1.5 litres left in that tub, and it was opened on the 10th of May.
Right. Do you do the thing? Listen, I ran into something stupid. I'll make it quick, but it's the longest. We do this big 15,000 footer. Just a few years ago, I don't do flooring anymore, but they said, can you come in and help us? We've never done anything this big. I had the longest single back out I've ever had in my career. Thank God we were using rollers. I had never used them. I think it was 175 feet. And I was so happy that I had this roller because It would have taken my lifetime backing it out by hand in the old day. I'm coming out, and I'm already about halfway, and I'm going along, and I look way 100 feet down the end. There's a kid catalyzing, and I run down there. He had 11 jugs of $150 finish catalyzed as I'm backing out. I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, well, I didn't know what to do, so I figured we'll just fill them and use them later. We capped them. They almost exploded. They turned into hockey pucks. Don't you use that system where you look at the side, you take a Sharpie, and get the 4 marks from the factory, and you just cut it in half, then you go to the catalyst, right? Cut it in half, cut it, right? Isn't that how you do it?
Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid. Just principle.
Yeah, you said in your article, practical systems lead to smoother jobs. Like you're saying, can somebody please just look at what we're using and not mix things? Don't mix the stains, and don't mix 2 stains and pour them back into the red mahogany container, please. And put them on the shelf without labeling them.
Yeah. Labels rub off or tear off. Paper labels tear off. So if you've got something marked on there, you're doing everything possible to know what you've got and how much you've got left of it.
Do you ever have problems with freeze, thaw, stable products? Do you get freezing temperatures?
Absolutely. In fact, just probably the last 3 jobs we've had exactly that issue. We've had temperatures of 3 degrees Celsius. That's pretty cold. So in the hills here, it does get very, very cold. And so we have coating concerns like any other sort of extreme temperature environments. We would often put them in a warm water bath just to warm up the finish to create 15 degrees Celsius minimum.
Yep.
And that way it's manageable. We know that we've got a predictable finish that we can still work with. None of the ingredients have separated. We're not having issues with bubbling and things like that because the finish just hasn't coped with that cold environment. Flip side, in the summer, if it's too warm, we might have 30, sometimes 40 odd degree temperature Celsius. That's extreme temperature range.
80, 90 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah. So we would put it in a cool water bath to cool the finish down. Whatever is necessary to make sure that job's going to be the best success we can give. And obviously environmental factors play a part. We've got a job at the moment, a parquetry job we're working on. I've got to bring that moisture content down out of the timber before I can even finish putting a sealer onto that. So we've got dehumidifiers in the space to try to control that moisture in the room. And the house is not occupied at the moment, so it's just an ice box. So whatever is necessary to, as I say, ensure a successful job.
Well, anybody that's listening to the podcast online, if you just go to Wood Floor Business, all you have to do is there's a little search box, just put Troy Stanfield, and all your stuff that you wrote came up. In that article, you mentioned something. It said that do you have a trade accounting software for these things? What is that?
We use an accounting software, but in that it has an inventory system. Okay. So we keep a good inventory of what's on hand. And as that gets used, it draws from that inventory electronically. So we're doing as much as we can to keep the business running as efficiently as possible because we're on the tools. As I say, my wife and I, we're working directors. So we're on the tools as well as the background admin. So whatever system we can have at our fingertips to make that mobile, for one thing, we can be anywhere. On our mobile phone, we can draw from that information and be able to know what's on hand. And that keeps a good stock take of things. And jobs can get away from you. You can forget to record information. So we would just have an electronic notepad that we can write, this was used on that job, this was used on that job. And then when we get home, log that into the system. And yeah, it draws from the inventory. So we're just trying to manage the business side of it as efficiently as possible while we are actively on the tools. And by being mobile, it doesn't limit us to have a store presence, but it can make for good, efficient workflow in that regard.
Yeah.
So
I'm a distributor. I don't hear that often. People will call and say, hey, I'm low on this, I'm lower that. And we kind of help them, or we might look in our software and say, you haven't bought this in a while. That's really smart that you know what's out there for your crews and what they might need and when it's getting low. And it probably makes it easier to stock, easier to shop, easier to look for a discount. I like that. That's slick.
Yeah, it worked for us. As long as it's working, we'll keep doing it. But yeah, I've worked in jobs over the years where it's the old-fashioned, you write down pieces of paper and then you lose that piece of paper and you don't know what's there, and it's just a nightmare. So yeah, we realised pretty early on this is a good step forward for us, and yeah, we're savvy enough with technology to know how to navigate those systems. But at the end of the day, I'm still a guy that works with his hands, and I don't want to be tied to an office chair
Nope.
to have that information. So yeah, it makes it very versatile for us, and yeah, it's effective.
Are there any differences you can tell us about between what is done for flooring in Australia and what we have for U.S. hardwood floor traditions? I'm not sure which country's older, us, you, them, same time. I don't remember.
You guys would be a little older than us.
250.
years. Yeah. We were founded in 1788 as a country, so a little bit later than you. But yeah, we've got different systems, a lot of similarities. What you would describe as probably a high-end installation method here would be a full trowel glue system.
Sure.
Whereas I think in the States you would maybe do glue assist, nail glue assist. It depends on obviously the application of what you're doing.
And the subfloor, yeah.
And the subfloor and so on. But yeah, we at least my business, we will do it if we're doing an installation. I clarified that we've moved away from the floated floor market.
Yeah,
that's your catalogue shoppers, your mums and dads looking for the big box store sort of sale, and they're all racing their way to the bottom, cheapest price. That's not us. That's not our market anymore.
Nope.
So if we do offer a glue down an installation, it's either a full trowel glue, or if it's a traditional floor on a joist system, obviously that's secret nail through the tongue and groove. But if it's, I think you guys have like a waxy paper that you might put down before you secret nail off a racked floor. We don't have that. So we rely on obviously an applied moisture barrier, like a liquid moisture barrier, so that we're making sure that we've got as good a bond as we can have that isn't going to be affected by environmental conditions. And that would be deemed as, a better quality installation over here than not doing that, or just a glue assist. If we did a glue assist here, our environment is so extreme at times in different localities that it just wouldn't grab to the floor. It would just, you'd almost be dealing with either a buckled floor or a floated floor because it's blown off the glue.
Do you have plywood, OSB, Advantech? We have there are wafer boards and different particle boards, but what do you have? What's the best of the best right now?
So typically we would see what we call structure floor, which is essentially a fine particle board for it would have resins and things impregnated into the fibers, so that's a structural quality board. It does tend to have a fairly waxy surface layer, so we would rough sand that to allow the products to etch to the surface,
like the glue.
Like the glues or the waterproofing agents, and that would be our approach. But it's not super common in at least my part of the country that we would have plywood subfloors. However, saying that, we would probably put a ply subfloor down, anchor it to the concrete over a moisture barrier rather, if we're maybe needing to build up a level, or the client is looking for maybe a more cost-effective approach rather than using cement leveling compounds to build up a thickness of a surface. So we would sometimes take that approach to maybe build up levels. Or if we've got one of the recent jobs we had a concrete and a timber subfloor in the same surface. So we chose to anchor plywood right across that entire area so that we've now got a uniform surface to work to. And that way it obviously breaches across the two subfloor substrates. That we can just make sure it's bridged over well with something that's going to be a successful job.
Sure. Still cleat nailing or stapling or same tool, same gun.
More or less, yes. The secret nailers, pneumatic nailers, we would have a cleat,
sure.
Staple. Most guys would be probably using staples now. in our country over the nail system, but sometimes you might see nails around, depending on the older guys might have older systems, old manual nailers maybe.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. I started my career with staplers because I used to sell tools, and now I won't do anything without cleats. You know what? We should just do oak around here. Then we started getting things like Brazilian cherry, bamboos, Santos mahogany, and especially hickory, and the staples would start causing splitting and checking. There's a whole podcast just on that alone, but it's interesting. You have basically the same stuff that we do. Something you think you do a little different that I read online that you don't see every guy do here. Very few of them, by the way. Herringbone, chevrons, and custom designs. How do you go get those? Or do they just throw them at you?
Early on, we were probably one of the first, I won't say the first, because there was guys already doing traditional solid herringbones in a, say, your more high-end market. But we were probably one of the first across town to be introducing patterned floors to our local market, at least. I know in the eastern states, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, they were probably in advance of us, and typically that's often the case. They're usually a couple of years in advance of trend changes to what we are in the centre of the country. But we're close behind that, but for our local market, we were probably one of the first people to start introducing that as this is possible, this is doable. Let's do patterned floors, and that probably just goes back to my woodworking background to say anything's doable. If one, they know it's available, it can be done, but also that there is someone skilled and capable enough to do it. And I found that that's become our little niche. Is a lot of the guys out there have come through these carpet stores and they're laying floated floors and they're moving on to direct stick floors or possibly into the sand and finish market. And they're not necessarily skilled enough to jump into that world. And early on, a lot of my business was made from fixing these guys' mistakes. And eventually I came to the point where, well, no, I don't want to keep fixing other people's mistakes. That's a mug's game.
Yeah.
So we set our own standards and we said, no. If you want us to do those repairs, it's coming at a premium price. And probably fair to say that your client won't accept the price.
Yeah, right.
And naturally, you're going to be putting your margin on it too. So, yeah, if you want us, this is the price. Take it or leave.
Don't you? We do it here. Don't you price it so you're saying, please don't give us this job? But if they do, exactly. I guess
when they do,
right? At least it's enough money. Right?
No. Yeah, and take on the headache. But yeah, so we will sometimes put a headache price on a job, and if it proceeds, we know that there's a healthy margin that we're going to take the headache on the chin, but it comes with risk, naturally. Sometimes you might get a vibe from a client. Maybe they're not a good fit for you.
Sure.
And so you might decide that there's a bit of skin in this game to put some protection in the price for you.
It might not be the flooring contractor. The homeowner could be a psychopath. I found my price sheet from my flooring company from like 30 years ago, and somebody said to me, what's that per square foot mental anguish? And I go, that's for those jobs I don't want. I just don't want, because Troy, when you take those jobs, the biggest thing you're doing is letting somebody else off the hook who should probably have the chance to fix it or do it. And maybe they just can't. But the minute you let them off the hook, everything they've done, you own. And if the builder's trouble, if the homeowner's trouble, now you've inherited it. And the other guy is off and running. And it could be hanging over your head like luggage.
Yes. And like any other business, we've learned those lessons the hard way sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
We're not immune to those things, but we've got a bit older and wiser, and I think for us now we've found a nice little happy place where I think the reputation is solid enough that people won't even call anymore,
right?
If they're looking for a headache job, or sometimes they'll sheepishly ring and say, "I've got this problem job that's got your name all over it, and we're going to look after you on price."
Right?
Maybe I'll think about it. Maybe I won't. at least courtesy of the question.
Well, listen, I want to jump to one section before we wrap everything up. You wrote the third magazine article I read was, I think it's the Irish jig incident. And, my forefathers are from Glen Bay, Ireland. My moms are from France, and like I said, I know my family's gotten thrown out of that country a long time ago. But you had a little run-in with some Irish gentlemen. Can you tell me about that job? Was that in Port Adelaide?
Port Adelaide. So down on the wharf area, this was an old heritage bank. A lady had moved over from Sydney. She was converting this place into her residence, and she'd come over with some money, and she was comfortable enough to do this project on this scale. But that was an accidental pick up on that job because a manufacturer had reached out to us on Instagram and said, I've got an online inquiry. They're thinking of using this product. Can you go and meet this lady? I said, no problems. We get out there and we start going through various samples. And long story short, we didn't end up winning his product. We went with a completely different manufacturer with a completely different product. And that job just grew in scale once we got talking with the lady and we realized you're a really good fit for us and we have the skills to pull off what you want to do. But she had gone out to get something from the car, and there was this crew of Irish plastering team upstairs, and she'd sort of introduced me to them and a few of the other decorators that were around the site. And she'd gone out to the car, and then the music started upstairs, and they had started what I can only describe as an Irish jig because the floor stomping upstairs was getting louder and louder, and they're carrying on. They're having a great time upstairs, and because they recognised that she was out of the building, and being an really old heritage building, these walls are a foot thick, so you can't hear from outside. But this music was stomping, and then I hear this and a noise and silence.
That's not good.
And that's not good. And she's come back in by this stage. We've gone through the samples, and I said, look, I just want to go and have a look upstairs to see what the scope of the work is upstairs. And it was an old Baltic pine flooring upstairs. But these boys had gotten so carried away with their little jig that they'd actually put their foot through the floor. But the more I looked around, the more I'd seen that their scaffolding had actually destroyed the whole surface layer of this soft pine timber. And I'm now thinking this is a job ahead of me when this job eventually comes to fruition. I'm going to have my work cut out for me just to restore the surface of this wood back to any usable condition. So that was quite funny. They were very nervous when she started wandering upstairs, and then when she's seen the damage that's happened, they were given their marching orders.
Well, us Irish are very good woodworkers historically, but we do get the word plastered confused a lot. Maybe they got the wrong memo for this job.
Right, yeah. They're a good crew of guys, but yes, they got a bit carried away, and unfortunately it cost them the contract, but it was good for us because we had a lot of work cut out for us.
I love that article because you had a quote in there I liked that said, I think you said, sometimes the music plays before the quote is signed. Was your quote signed? Did you get paid for this? Did you get paid twice for this?
We did get paid for that. We did get paid, and some. She ended up being one of our best customers on the books, so that's been great.
That works. All right, listen. See how quick things go. I'm going to give you some speed round questions. And Troy, listen. I could talk with you all day. I really appreciate you coming for this. I'm going to give you the speed round questions. You answer them the best you can, and then we'll wrap it up a little bit. Are you ready for your speed round questions?
Sure.
All right. You have a favorite woodworking tool?
I would say
the kind
mallet.
You would say, don't touch that, and when I retire, it's going with me. That kind of tool, like that is mine.
Yep, my mallet. I'm a woodworker first before my sanding and finishing. So I would say that's going to come with me.
Sometimes we say there are groups or musicians that are overrated or underrated. You think there's a wood species that you like very well, and do you have one that's a little overrated and one that's a little underrated?
The utility grade pine floors, I would say, have been flogged to death around the world, I'm sure, but they're just not hard wearing. They look pretty when they've been restored, but they're just a problematic wood to work with. So I would say that's one I would say get off the books. As a favourite, I still go back, and it is a very staple wood here used in our flooring market, but blackbutt, which is another eucalypt. I love the colour, I love the texture, I love the workability. It has some really interesting grain. The wood borers and gum veins leave their little trace through the timber, and that creates natural feature. And I love that. It's organic, it's natural. And some people need a bit of convincing that these are natural features. They're not imperfections, quotation mark.
Right.
It's a natural feature of the wood, and I love that about it.
If you never got into hardwood flooring, what would you be doing?
I would probably still be making furniture.
Yeah.
I'd be back in my roots, and a lot of life under the belt now. I would have a very specific market in mind, and very, very high end finish, very high end design, but it's morphed. What my tastes have morphed over the years in what I like and what I don't like. But now I have a very unique perspective on that. And if I had to get out of that, I'd probably jump back into that and see that to my retirement.
If you could only pick one, herringbone, chevron, or some wild chaos type thing,
I would go the wild chaos.
Yeah, you referenced that. What is that?
Well, I as I say, I'm still just a woodworker at heart, so I'm always going to find something creative to come back on. Herringbone floors are super, super popular in our area right now, and while we probably jumped in at the fledgling stage of its growing trend, and it is a timeless, beautiful pattern, and same with chevron in the right place, but push the boundaries. Let's go curves. Let's go design. Let's go interesting.
You got a pet peeve? Anything in flooring that really ticks you off?
Laziness.
We all hate that one. Okay. How do you finish a long day? You have a beer, you have some coffee, you have some tea. What's the drink of the day when you're done?
I am a coffee drinker, so I would probably do that. But if it's been a really hard slog and maybe nearing the end of the week, it's definitely a cold beer.
There you go. All right. Listen, that's all the tough stuff. Do you have a website, social media? What are you using?
Yes, website is currently being reconstructed as we speak. Instagram, you will find me reasonably daily on. Certainly, that's probably the most prominent place people will find me. Facebook is another that you'll find us, and LinkedIn we're on as well. I am on TikTok, but I don't really use it. That's new generation. But yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram especially, but Facebook as well.
Well, for those listening to, Plankd is Plankd. Plankd with no E in there. And yeah, you are easy to find. And they can find all the stuff we talked about that you've written on at Wood Floor Business Magazine or woodfloorbusiness.com, and just, go to the Google in the search box. But Troy, hey, from all the way 14 hours around the other side of the world, you're the greatest, man. I really appreciate taking the time to be up this early in the morning to chat with me.
No, that's great, and we appreciate it as well. And certainly the international collaborations with guys such as yourself and others that we've been exposed to, that's been amazing. We've had an amazing trip to Germany earlier in the year, and yeah, we've made some good industry friends around the world.
Well, half my family that left Ireland went to Australia, and I talk with them. I've never met them. This will give me a chance. I'll go. We'll meet with you. I'll help you do a little buffing, little coating. You can let me use a little tilty sander. I can stay behind the rest of the class. Listen, thank you very much.
Long gone are those days.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, thank you very much, Troy Stanfield from Plankd Flooring, for hanging in with me on all things wood floor.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Take care, everybody. We will talk again soon.
Thanks to Aussie pro Troy Stanfield of Plankd Flooring for taking the time to share some of his life as a timber floor pro. And thanks to the seasoned sponsor of all things wood floor, Odie's Oil, the wood floor finish that is safe and beautiful while delivering a lower cost and higher profit margin. You can find the articles that Stephen and Troy referenced in the description for this episode. If you liked this episode, please rate and review All Things Wood Floor, and don't forget to subscribe.